Okay. So just for the purposes of the recording, to reiterate, the purpose of this training is to give you a basic foundation of how to go about report writing, and if you've never done it before, but we're not going to go too deep into that because that's kind of beyond the scope of this training. The primary purpose of this training is to show you how to build reports and dashboards specifically in the SAS environment. And as you go through this process, just be sure to validate your data and to work closely with decision support to make sure that the dashboards and reports that you're making are actually communicating what you intend them to communicate. So yeah, now you want to go to this URL that's on the screen to log into SAS. And before you log into SAS, again, you need to be signed into the Pulse VPN. Okay, so with that said, let's jump into SAS. Now, when you log into SAS, where you land can vary depending upon where you last left off. Typically, I land in this folder structure, the SAS folder structure, but if you land somewhere else and you're kind of confused, all you have to do to get oriented is go up to these, I call it the pancake stack on the top left, click that, and that shows you all the SAS modules that are available to you. Now, you're probably only going to see one or two of them, likely just Explore and Visualize and Share and Collaborate. And honestly, those are the only two you need. Those are the only two that I use, really. Explore and Visualize is where you go to create a report from scratch. So we'll get to there in just a little bit. Share and Collaborate, if you click on that, that'll take you, if you're not already there, it'll take you to the SAS folder structure. Now, this folder structure, first, likely you'll land in your My folder. If you don't land there, then you can just click here in the My folder area. When you're in the folder structure, you want to make sure that of all these tabs available that you see here, typically you want to stay in the All tab because that just shows you all the items that are in the SAS folder structure. Sometimes if I was working on something and I forgot where I saved it, and like I had literally just been working on it or I worked on it yesterday, I can click on Recent, and then I can modify, the filter of what items I want to look at. So who was it modified by? When did they modify it? So earlier today yesterday I was looking for a report that I was working on February 3rd, and that takes me to all the reports that I had open on February 3rd. So Recent can be helpful, but if you just want to look through the entire folder structure, make sure you're clicked on the All tab. Then under the All tab, you want to make sure you have this folder icon here selected, not the filter. Make sure you have the folder icon. So these are the different areas within the folder structure. First, you have My Favorites, and that is where you save shortcuts to areas within the SAS folder library. You're not actually saving files here, you're only saving shortcuts to those files. So as you see, I have shortcuts to the standard report dashboards and to the standard report templates, both of which we will be touching upon today. I have a shortcut to the SAS Viya documentation. So SAS Viya is actually this environment. I mean, SAS, we call it the SAS environment, but SAS is a very broad umbrella term. SAS Viya is specifically their enterprise reporting tool, and so that's what we're working with today. So I have a link to their documentation tab that tells you a little bit about everything that you'll find in this environment. And again, I'll show you how to create this shortcut shortly. Then there's My Folder. Now in your My Folder, you can save reports and dashboards that you're working on that nobody else has access to. So this is helpful if you just want to create something that's only for you, or if you're creating something that's currently a work in progress and you don't want somebody to accidentally use it thinking that's accurate, but it's not quite ready for production yet. So My Folder is where you can save stuff that's just for you. And then you have the SAS content. So SAS content is like the public folder, so to speak. From SAS content, you want to click on UNLV. And then under UNLV, you have all these folders dedicated to different offices and departments or colleges across campus. So you will likely not see all of these options. You'll see, based on your data needs, you'll see a subset of these folders. So if you work in the College of Sciences, you'll probably see the College of Sciences folder here, and so on and so forth. If you don't see a folder here that you think should exist, it could mean that you don't have access to it. Then just email decision support at iap@unlv.edu, and we can evaluate your need to have access to that folder. And if the folder truly doesn't exist, then we can work with you to create that folder. Ultimately, though, the reason we have this public folder here, because if you work for the College of Sciences or whatever other group is in here, and you want to create a report that you want other people in your org or department to have access to, then you can save it in this folder structure. So it's a common area that you all have access to, and that you can save stuff in a place that the rest of your team can also utilize. So yeah, that's what that is. Let's see. The next thing we want to do is we want to put a few things at your fingertips so that they're easy to access, essentially. So it can be like sometimes clicking through here can be a little confusing. You can get lost in all these subfolders. So that's why I've utilized the My Favorites area to put some stuff right at my fingertips. So I've created some shortcuts. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to put a few things at your fingertips. First, we're going to do that for standard report templates. Standard report templates are essentially, they are starting points with which to build reports and dashboards that communicate official reporting data. I'm not going to get too into what exactly standard reports are and how they work and all that just yet. That'll be for later. But we do want to make those easily available to us. So to create that shortcut, we first need to navigate to the standard report template folder. So to navigate there, let's start with institutional resources. Click on that. And then don't click on report templates yet. Just see that it's right there. Now, right click on report templates. And here it says remove from favorites for me because I already have it saved to my favorites. But here, if you don't have it saved to your favorites, you can click add to favorites here. And then once you go up to your my favorites, you'll see that it's in there. So I have the standard report templates shortcut. Now that's a custom name that I saved it as. If you right click on the shortcut itself, you can click set favorites name and you can set that to whatever you want. The second thing, well, wait a second while you guys do that. Okay, the second thing that we want to put at your fingertips is a shortcut to the standard report dashboards. So I'm going to click on the dashboards button here. And then UNLV Analytics Dashboards. And again, don't click on it, but down here you'll see the standard reports folder. Instead of left clicking, you want to right click on it. And once again, click add to favorites, and then you can set the favorites name however you like. Okay. So once you have it in your My Favorites, that shortcut created, you can go ahead and click on the Standard Report Dashboards shortcut. And now you see all of the Standard Report dashboards. So I know that this training is primarily about report writing. But before we start writing reports, we always want to be aware of the resources that are currently available so that we don't duplicate efforts that have already, been used. So essentially, our default response, it should not be, okay, I'll create a new report or dashboard for this new request. It should always be, what else is out there that could possibly address this? And if there isn't anything, then let's build a report or a dashboard for it. So what are the standard report dashboards? Well, first off, if you haven't already attended the training for those, it is available, and you can check that out on our website. But the standard report dashboards is a set of dashboards that have commonly requested metrics regarding student data, student and course related data and degree related data and so forth, that allows users, regardless of their data background or their familiarity with querying data or just their data literacy, it allows them to access commonly requested metrics in a very easy, intuitive, and customizable user interface. So like it has everything from admissions to distinct student headcount to course enrollment, again, degrees, and student tracking, which is a combination of retention and grad rate. So these dashboards are really helpful because they look at these common metrics, but they're so customizable that it's more often than not, a request that we get in decision support here for numbers, a lot of times the question can be answered simply with these standard reports. So again, I encourage you, if you have a question that you need to answer with data, before jumping to create your own dashboard, definitely consult the standard reports first. Now, one thing to note about the standard reports is that the word standard, that wording is intentional. It's standard because this data is what the university considers to be truth. So these dashboards communicate official reporting data. This is the data. These are the numbers that we communicate out to, U.S. News and World Reports, out to iPads, out to other surveys and grant applications and things like that. So for that reason, this data is frozen. By frozen, what I mean to say is it was captured as of a census date, a preliminary or a final census date. A census date is when, preliminary census date is 2 weeks after the start of the term, and final census date is 2 weeks after the end of the term. And these census dates, these capture dates, they are used to take a snapshot of what the data looked like for that term at a specific point in time, so that down the road, when we want to reference the data for that term, we have these frozen points in time with which we can look at the data. And that's because if we are going to be using this data for official reporting, we don't want it to change, right? We don't want to communicate a number to some survey and then they come back to us and like ask us to audit the numbers or whatever. And we don't want to be like, well, we have no idea how we got to that number. No, we want the data sources that we're reporting from to be static. They can't change because this is, again, what the university defines as true. So these dashboards utilize data sources that capture the data at specific points in time. So if you are looking to communicate official numbers, if you need to fill out surveys, or you want to look at longitudinal data and compare trends and things like that, then official reporting data is probably for you. However, if you want to look at the most recent data available, like if you're an advisor and you want to look at who is, as of today or last night at midnight, which is when we load the new data, and you want to look at who is enrolled in your department or your academic plan or whatever it might be, The standard report dashboards probably won't be for you. You'll probably need to utilize a different data source than what these utilize. But yeah, so in essence, you want to be very deliberate in which data sources you utilize whenever you're pulling this data, because different data sources, they capture the data at different times and they upload and they update with varying frequencies. So you want to be very familiar with the data sources you're utilizing. And the standard report dashboards happen to utilize these census captures type data sources. So to give you an idea of what these dashboards look like, we're not going to go all the way through them, but I'll show you what the university headcount one looks like. Okay. Now, when you open a dashboard or a report, now that you have report writer access, it could open up in report viewer mode or in report editing mode. Right now, it's in view mode. And I know it's in view mode because I don't see toolbars on the left and right side of the page. But more specifically, when I look at this pencil icon up here in the top left, I see that it's not shaded, so it's not selected. If I click on it, it says that it's editing now, and so I have this toolbar on the left, and then I have a toolbar on the right as well. If you're just going to view a dashboard or a report, make sure you're in view mode, because you just got to utilize the entire screen that you're working with when you're in view mode. Now, another thing to be aware of is that while it didn't do it this time for me, a lot of times SAS will take you back to your most recently to a previous user session with this dashboard or whatever dashboard you're working with. So in that case, it will reactivate all the filters that you had set and all the any breakouts you had set. So essentially, you won't be starting from scratch. You may already have filters in place, and you may not even realize those filters are in place. So whenever you look at certain numbers, they're going to look way off to you. And if that is the case, then what you need to do is go ahead and click, or actually not if that's the case, what you always need to do whenever you open a report is go up here to this vertical ellipsis and click on that. And then in this general area, if there is an option that says restore default report state, restore default report state. If that option is available, you want to click it, because that resets all the filters, resets all the breakouts to the point at which everything is like brand new. You're starting with a clean slate. So let me show you what I mean by that. I go to the Data Explorer tab, and I'll wait for it to load that real quick. Okay, now as you can see, breakout number 4 is already set to academic career, but that is because that is the default. This is how it was meant to be viewed in the first place. So it's okay that breakout 4 is set to career. But let's say we filtered for cohort filter and then iPads fall first year cohort. We set it to iPads new freshman. So now all this data gets filtered down, so we're only looking at iPads new freshman. If we had logged into this report and that filter was already in place, we'd see these numbers. And while these numbers make sense in the context of fall new freshman, they don't make sense in the context of I was expecting to see total enrollment for the entire university. So what's going on? So that just highlights why whenever you open a dashboard, you want to be sure to always go up to this vertical ellipsis, and if it's available, click Restore Default Report State. Sometimes you have to do it a second time, which is a little bit frustrating, but I've never had to do it more than 2 times. Either way, just make sure you click Restore Default Report State until it's no longer an option, and it should take you back to the first tab in the report when you do. Okay, so that out of the way, we always know that we have to reset everything. More generally specific, or more specific to the standard report dashboards, whenever you log into any of them, there's 2 things that will always be there. One is the Welcome tab, which gives you an overview of what's in the dashboard. And then in the overview and report notes, it gives you notes on some underlying filters that may be present that you may not be aware of, and things like that. And it just tells you general design notes. And then if you click on the documentation tab, this is kind of the overview on steroids. It tells you not only what this dashboard provides, it also gives you a mini data dictionary of the fields that you may come across in this dashboard. So if you see something that you're not sure what it means, if you see a field or a term that you're not sure what it means in this dashboard, check out the documentation tab, and it should hopefully answer your question. If it doesn't, you can go back to the Welcome tab, and at the very bottom of the report notes section, there's a link to the data dictionary that you can go to, and that'll take you to the decision support website where you can look at a more expanded and significantly more comprehensive data dictionary for all the data in our production warehouse. So yeah, let's go ahead and click on the first tab in the University Headcount dashboard, and that's University at a Glance. So this is a great example of how you can visualize data graphically in SAS Viya. There are a ton of different graphs on this. Not only do you see the bar charts here that are currently displayed, but in most of these objects, you see there's multiple bar charts that you can toggle across. So right here in this object, we're currently looking at headcount by academic career. But as you can see at the top of this box, there's tabs for credential category. So now you can look at headcount by credential category or by credential subcategory. Here is currently by college, but we could switch it to department. We could switch it to plan. Residency, we could toggle that to primary market group, and so forth. And what's really great is not only can you toggle across these tabs to see more visualizations on a single page, you can also click on these and say, I'm going to click on undergraduate, and these charts will actually interact with each other. So by clicking on the undergraduate bar in this chart, I filtered the rest of these charts to only look at undergraduate data as well. And then if I clicked on female here, once again, all of these charts are going to update again. So now we're only looking at undergraduate female students. And up here, this shows you the filter breadcrumb, essentially. So you can tell that by the active filters that you have created by clicking on these charts are undergraduate and female so far. Well, you can also utilize the report filters on the left side of the page to further filter down this data by fields that may not be available in these visualizations. So, we could say we want to look at student group filters where we only want to look at student athletes. So now we're only looking at student athletes. This actually brings up an important point though. If you're going to utilize report filters at the same time that you're going to click on these charts, you need to make sure you utilize the report filters first, and then you click on the charts to create the breadcrumb filters, because as you can see what just happened, clicking on a report filter, or activating a report filter rather, resets all of the breadcrumb filters. So right now at the very bottom of the page, you see this interactive filter text, and it says we're currently filtered for fall 2021, which is denoted here. You could switch what term we're filtered on here. And then we're also filtered for student athlete. Equals student athlete. But once again, we can just filter for undergraduate again. And we can then filter for female again as well. So if you're going to utilize those filters in unison, breadcrumb and report filters, again, just make sure you set the report filters first, and then you click on the charts. It's a little idiosyncrasy of SAS, but it's something you just get used to using, or to working around. Now this filter breadcrumb, this again tells you all the filters that are active, that were activated by you clicking on the charts. Whereas this interactive filter text shows you all the filters that are active, all the user created filters that are active. So it shows you that we are filtered for fall 2021 via this page filter. It shows you that we are filtered for student athletes via this report filter. And it shows you that we're filtered for undergraduate and female students as well, just by clicking on these charts. Well, if you wanted to just undo the filters you set by clicking on the charts, you can utilize this filter breadcrumb. And all you have to do is click on the X next to these filters. And not only do the charts reset, but also you see the filters disappear from the interactive filter text at the bottom of this page. You always want to have an interactive filter text at the bottom of your reports and dashboards, so that users can always tell what filters are active. This plays back into that thing that we just discussed about how sometimes SAS will take you back to a previous session and have old filter selections activated. You always want a way for your users to see at a glance what filters are active, so that's why it's important to have this text box. And we will discuss exactly how you achieve this later on today. But good news, it's super, super easy to do. So that's one way to visualize the data. Another way is to do so with a line graph, and it allows you to look at it over time. Now, one thing to notice is that the student athlete flag is still selected. That's because back here in the University at a Glance tab, we selected student group equals student athlete equals student athlete. Well, all of these filters on the left here, they're all report filters, and they affect all of the tabs found in this dashboard. Whereas this filter here for term is at the top of the page, and the location at the top of the page indicates that it is a page filter. So the page filters only affect the page that they are on. Now, you could set the report filters to be at the top of the page, at the bottom, or the right side of the page. I always set report filters to be on the left and page filters to be at the top, just because it's easier for me to remember what's what. So I encourage you to develop your own kind of workflow and formatting, consistent formatting that allows you to remember, what filters filter on what thing and so forth. So going back to enrollment trends, again, we see student athlete is still filtered on. So I am going to click on student groups. I'm going to undo that filter. So I'm going to click clear filter. And now what we see is we're looking at total university enrollment from fall 10 through fall 2021. And it just shows you enrollment trends essentially. But if you want to break that out by a specific variable, you can do that by clicking on the line breakout select and choosing a variable that will allow you to break that line out by all the values within that field. So let's say we wanted to break it out by gender. Instead of a single line, now we're going to have two lines, one for men and one for women. And you can see the enrollment trends still longitudinally over time, but you can see it by gender value specifically. If you use the chart breakout, you get something similar. I'll select residency. Instead of breaking it out specific lines, you break it out across charts. So you have one chart for non-res, one chart for res, and one for unknown. And within each of those charts, you still have the longitudinal enrollment broken out by gender. So a lot of different ways, a lot of different examples for how you could to utilize that. And then finally, we have the Data Explorer tab, which is, this is a tab that you're going to find in all of the dashboards pretty much, and it just gives you a pivot table worth of data that allows you to just look at raw numbers. So pretty straightforward. And then you can use these breakouts to break out the data in whatever way you like. Currently, breakout 4 is assigned to academic career. So you see in breakout 4 here, the head count is broken out across all the values in academic career. But if I were to click no selection, you just get broad overall head counts, regardless of what the career is. There we go. But let's say, we wanted to look at it by college, by department, and then by plan. Yeah, this part takes a bit because it does take a while to load all this. There we go. So now we know that breakout 2 is college, breakout 3 is department, and breakout 4 is plan. So you can see within the College of Education, these are all the departments, and within those departments are the plans. And then you can see all the head counts related to that combination right there. So, you can fiddle with this to, break it out by college and gender, or department and test score, or ethnicity and academic career. It's whatever you want to do. Tons of different ways to organize this. But yeah, so just to get real quick again, the standard report dashboards are for official reporting data. They are frozen data. And as you can see, you can look up these specific metrics, whether that's admissions, headcount, course enrollment, degrees, or retention and graduation rates. You can look at that in an environment that allows you to break out the data a number of different ways and filter it down to a very specific subpopulation. So again, whenever you get a request, or you think that you might need to create a report or dashboard, first, check with these dashboards, these standard report dashboards, to see if they answer the questions you have. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
I have one question.
Okay.
When you showed us the dashboard with the athlete, if they had 2 majors, are they counted twice or just their primary major?
Great question. So all the head counts that you'll see in these dashboards, or really all the counts that you'll see, are distinct counts. So if, for instance, I'm going to get rid of this academic plan breakout. Okay, actually, sorry, this is just going to bother me. I do none of that, and then Yeah, let's just do academic plan. Okay, let's say that a student was enrolled in writing for dramatic media, and they're also enrolled in women's studies. So in this case, and they're enrolled in fall 17. In this case, they would be counted once here and once here. But whenever, like, let's say you added a like show, you right clicked on the table and you clicked show totals. In that case, one of the things this dashboard teaches you is patience. Or it reveals how little you have. In my case, it just reveals how little I have.
It's okay. I had to wait 10 minutes for a query last semester and I kept thinking it was broken.
Oh my gosh, that sounds awful. So here, again, there would be kind of once here for writing for dramatic media and then once here for women's studies. But then when you're looking at the total, they'd only be counted once. So within each category, they'll be counted once. They'll be counted, but in the grand total, they will only be counted once. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Great question. Does anybody else have any questions? All righty. Well, in that case, let's go ahead and I'm going to we want to start looking at building our own reports from scratch, right? So what we want to do is click on the pancake stack again on the top left. Oh, actually, before I do that, sorry. Let's click on this edit button. And now you can see that, well, let's click on welcome real quick. And let's say you were to make a change to the university headcount dashboard. Like, I'm going to double click into this text box. I'm going to add a space. When I make that very small change up on the right, you see it has the save button. Now, whenever you save it, you should not be able to save on top of this query. In fact, if you do like add a space to one of these text boxes and then you click the save button, it should say, save to my folder, because it's only going to allow you to save your own version of this to your my folder or wherever else you have access to save it to. But you shouldn't be able to save on top of that. That said, don't test it. I mean, you shouldn't be able to do it, but I don't want to tempt fate or anything. To be safe, go ahead and if you did want to save a copy of this, click on the vertical ellipsis and then click Save As, and that will allow you to save it, wherever you want. So yeah, I'm going to keep this dashboard open because it'll be handy to reference. But now, again, we are going to click on the pancake stack. And, actually, I was going to say click Explore and Visualize, but that'll actually take you back here. I forgot. So what we want to do is we want to create our own report from scratch, right? So instead of clicking Explore and Visualize, let's click on the vertical ellipsis again, and then click New. All right, so this is starting from scratch. So what I want to discuss in this next segment of the training is how to prepare a data source. This section is going to be heavy on, choosing a data source, filtering it, and, learning how to troubleshoot some stuff. So we're not going to be visualizing the data yet, but just letting you guys know that up front. because in the past people would be like, I can't see the data. Where is the data? Whenever we select a data source, the data will be there. It's just we won't see charts or anything yet. Just letting you guys know that. So right now the focus is preparing a data source from scratch. And the first thing you want to do is select a data source. So to select a data source, you want to make sure that this data button, this data toolbar is selected. And to select the data source, pretty straightforward. All you have to do is you can click this drop down, or you can click this actions button right here and then click add data, whichever one you want to do. And you want to make sure that you're always working with the available tab. That shows you all the data sources that are available to you. Now, once again, because I work with all this stuff, I see a lot more data sources than you will. You'll probably see, actually, I'm not sure how many you'll see, but you won't see all the data sources that are loaded into SAS. You only see those that you have access to. If you click data sources, that'll show you even all the sources that you don't have access to. So there's no point in clicking on the data sources because it'll just confuse you. Unless you want to see what all is out there, but it's up to you. So for this, we have admissions census, admissions funnel, enrollment census official, which again is that snapshot data because it's the official data. You have unofficial, which is almost live data, as close to live data as we get. It's loaded, it's updated every night, every Friday, or every night at midnight. A ton of different other options as well. So let's go ahead and, well, before we click on a data source, you want to make sure, or you want to make sure that you are choosing the right one. So, like, let's say I wanted to look at degrees. Well, you want to make sure that you first you find a data source that is designed to communicate degrees to you. Like, each data source is designed to communicate a specific metric or metrics. So you want to make sure that you are choosing the data source that was designed to communicate the metric you need. Then you want to consider the capture timing and the frequency of updates that data source has. So, like, if I'm interested in degrees, then I can look at degrees conferred IPEDS and degrees conferred MR. Well, MR stands for most recent. So that means it's another one of those pretty much live tables that gets updated nightly. So which one of these would I use? Well, if you're interested in pulling official reporting data, then you're going to want to use the IPEDS version, because IPEDS is, that is the source that we have to communicate, or the organization that we have to submit our official reporting data to. I mean, one of the big ones at least. So you want to make sure that the data source that you are choosing is going to be the one that is suited to your needs. And if I were brand new to UNLV and I knew that I needed to write a report on degrees, and I were to look at this list, I mean, I may just click on one of them and hope for the best, but I may not get the right one. Or if I wanted to look at enrollment, I may click on the official or unofficial. It just depends. You're not going to know which data source necessarily to use just by looking at this available tab. A lot of times, especially whenever you're first getting acquainted with the UNLV data environment, you're going to need to talk with people who are really familiar with the data sources, and you'll need to discuss, this is what I'm trying to accomplish, this is what I'm trying to communicate to my users, or just for me. What data source do you suggest I utilize? So be sure that you are very deliberate and intentional with the data source that you choose. It's really the most important decision you make in this entire process, is which data source you're going to work with. So make sure you're very deliberate with that. For right now, I'm going to say let's work with enrollment census official, because we're going to fiddle around maybe with some head count data. I mean, we utilize the enrollment census official to look at head count. Whenever you click on a data source, it gives you this metadata summary that you can look at, and it just, it tells you, what field types are these, like what does SAS interpret these fields to be, and so forth. Depending upon what information you're looking for, this might be useful. I don't really utilize it that much. So once you have clicked on it, go ahead and click OK. Okay, now the next thing that you're going to need to do whenever you are when you're preparing a data source, after you've selected it and you know which one is is the right one for you, the next thing you need to do is filter it. It's highly unlikely that, well, it's rare, I'll say that you are working with a data source and you don't need to filter it at all. Like, you need to look at all the data in that data source. It's very rare, at least for me, to do that, because even if you're looking at official reporting data, if you want to look at head count for fall, 2021, well, if you're looking for official numbers for fall 2021, then you know that you want to look at the preliminary census capture. Well, this enrollment census official, which is used to communicate official head count, that has a preliminary census capture and a final census capture for fall semesters. So you want to make sure that you are filtering for the preliminary census capture for all fall terms. And that's actually the same for spring terms. For fall and spring, we only utilize preliminary census to look at head count for official reporting purposes, that is. For summer, we don't have a preliminary head count, so we utilize the final head count to look at enrollment. So if you were building a report from scratch and you wanted to look at official reporting numbers, then you would have to insert a filter. You would have to filter this data set such that all fall and spring terms look at preliminary census and summer only looks at final. So how do you filter the entire data source? Well, to do that, you have to click this Actions button. And as you can see, once you have data source selected, there's a lot more options here. You can refresh the data source. That's if you think the data source has updated since you've opened this report, which is very rare in the case of UNLV, because we usually only update data at like midnight or very early in the morning. So it's not common that you're going to need to refresh the data set in the middle of the day. You could change the data source to something else if you realize another data source is more suited to to the needs of your report or dashboard. A lot of different stuff, but the focus here is how do we filter it, right? So if you want to filter a data source, you just click that Actions tab, and then you select Apply Data Filter. And then here we get our first look at the coding interface in SAS. So this is where you get to write some SAS VIA code to say if the term is fall or spring, then I want to look at preliminary census. If the term is summer, then I want to look at final census. Well, there are two ways to code. One is this visual interface, which is literally a drag and drop interface. You can drag if statements, comparison like equal to's, or in statements, not in, not missing, other numeric stuff, operators, text operators, and so forth. You literally drag and drop these things, and you create logic through this drag and drop thing. The other way you can go about this is through just straight up typing out the text yourself. You could say well, I'm not even going to fiddle with that right now, but you could say fall term, or this is where you can just type in, if fall, then census capture equals preliminary, and if spring, then preliminary, if summer, then final. You could type that in there yourself if you are familiar enough with the code syntax. The code syntax is not really, well, I guarantee it's nothing that you have encountered exactly before. That said, it's really not that complicated. It's not straight up SAS, like if you're used to like coding in raw SAS. It's not that. It's not really that syntax. It's not really SQL. I find it's kind of a combination of a couple different things that I've done before. Either way, it's really not that hard to do. But later in this training, we're going to go over specifically, how to actually code in this environment. We're just not going to do it just yet. Ultimately, what I wanted to communicate now is that once you have selected a data source, the next step is to apply a data source filter to only look at the records that you're interested in. And when you do that data source filter, you have this interface, one of which is drag and drop. The other is actually writing the text. But again, we will go over how to code in here in just a little bit. For now, I'm going to click cancel. Then let's see. Actually, 1 second. Let me check something. Okay. Now, as you can see, we're going through a lot of stuff already right now, and I'm trying to show you a little bit of everything, and a lot of stuff I'm saying, oh, but we're not going to do this now. We're going to do this a little bit later in the training, and we will do that later in the training. But unfortunately, there is a lot of stuff in here that is just beyond the scope of what we can do in any sense of in any kind of concise training. So what I want to do is help you add something to your My Favorites that will allow you to troubleshoot stuff if you run into something that you don't understand, or if you run into an error sign or something like that. So I want to help you add in a hyperlink to your My Favorites that takes you to the SAS via documentation page. So to do that, let's first go to the Pancake stack and then click Share and Collaborate. Then go ahead and click on your My Favorites folder here on the top left. Now, I already have this link here. It says SAS via documentation. So what I'm going to do is edit the link. And I'm going to click on that. For those that are potentially viewing the recording of this video, hopefully that this text here is big enough for you to read. Otherwise, just email iap@unlv.edu and we can give you the hyperlink to get to the SAS via documentation. But for those who are attending this training now in person, I am going to put that link in the chat so that you can copy it. Now, once you have that link copied, and I'll wait a second. Once you have that link copied, just right-click on any of these blank rows. Oh, wait, I know it. I know what we got to do. Instead, you have to start with your My folder. My bad. Yeah, you can't create it directly in your My Favorites because you're not allowed to actually save items in your My Favorites. You're only allowed to save shortcuts in your My Favorites. So, my bad. So you have to start in My folder and then right-click on any of the blank rows and then click Add or click New Link. And then you want to paste that URL here in the URL button and then under label, SAS via documentation. So once you have it saved there, I typically just right click on it and click add to favorites. I already have it in my favorites though, so I don't need to add it again. Once you have the link created, go ahead and click on it. And here is the documentation website. And I am pleased to say that of the documentation that I've seen of a couple different reporting softwares and things like that, this is actually one of the more user-friendly documentation websites. So that's good. The search is pretty effective, I've found. But ultimately, even just from this homepage, you can look at some of the basic things that you'll encounter in these dashboards, and you can click on those, and they will give you a pretty detailed breakdown of what those things are. So let's say, I'd gotten stuck creating a filter on the data source. In that case, I could type in, I believe I think it's operators is the thing. Yeah, operators. Those are the logic expressions that you can drag into the coding interface. So if you wanted to click, so if I click on that, working with calculate items and report, calculate items also is the same environment they use for creating a filter. So calculated items and data source filters, same stuff. And you can just see all the stuff that goes into that. So you can do reference conditions for filters. So you can see all the conditions that are in a filter and what they are, how they work. Reference operators for data expressions. This gives you a list of all the data expressions that are available in the coding interface and what they are and how they work. So really handy stuff. So in short, I wanted to give you this resource so that if we ever, if not if, but whenever you come across something that we weren't able to cover in the training, see if you can find that out in the documentation here. But otherwise, definitely don't hesitate to contact decision support to get past something that you're struggling with. We'll be glad to help you out there. So I'm going to click back on this and click on SAS. Yeah, the SAS page again. Now let's click back on the pancake stack and then click explore and visualize again. Even though we had clicked off this, it still remained active in the background, so it still should be available for you. And up here on the right, see this 2 thing? That's because we have 2 things open in SAS. We have the standard report dashboard at the university headcount that we were looking at earlier, and we have this generic report 1 that we were building from scratch. So I just want to finish up this one last thing about building or preparing, a data source from scratch, and then we're going to take our first break. So preparing a data source from scratch, first step was choosing a data source that is designed to communicate the metrics that we need to communicate. Then it's filtering that data source, and now it's create metrics. So for this one, our interest is communicating headcount. So we have to create a headcount metric from scratch. Well, headcount is really just a distinct count of student IDs. So all you have to do is find the student ID field. And to do that, if we click on this filter search, I'm just going to type in ID. I scroll down, I see this student details student ID field. If I right click on that, student ID field, I can click New Calculation, and automatically it's counting that the count type is distinct count. So I can just name it head count and click OK, and there we go. That's all there is to it. A lot of the measures that you're going to be working with will be distinct counts, like applications and admitted applications and enrolled applications and degrees or certificates conferred and things like that. So a lot of the measures that you would need to create are as simple as, doing a distinct count of some ID or another. But then others are or aggregations. Like if you want to look at course enrollment, it would be, a sum of FTE or a sum of credit hours and things like that. So it just depends. But either way, whenever you are building up a report from scratch, you will have to build out those measures yourself. Now, if instead you wanted to build out a report using a report template, then those measures would, or at least a set of measures will be readily available for you. And the data source itself will be chosen, and a filter will already be applied to the data source. And there will be some custom fields defined in there that have custom logic available to you. All that said, these templates, if it has all these things in place already, they are definitely designed to present a specific set of data. So you have to first decide if the templates are right for you. Either way, we're going to look at standard report templates and what they are and how to use them when we come back. But let's take a 10-minute break and come back at 2:19, and we will continue on from there.
Bobby, real quick, will we learn how to write our own templates for data that, for instance, I have data that I do at the end of each semester. So will I be able to create a template for that I can just use each semester?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, by template, I guess, what do you mean by? I mean, I think how I'm understanding you, I think we will be teaching you that. But could you explain it real quick?
Yeah, so for instance, in the old environment it was in the sandbox, and it would have I guess it would have all the filters except for the term code and the student IDs. But it would have, for instance, we always pull math course final grades for a specific set of students. So I'd have, the department filtered to math, the catalog number filtered, the final grade filtered, and then for a specific semester, I would just go in and put in the IDs and make sure that the term code was correct so that I could just not have to create it every semester, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we will get to, I mean, I can't promise that I'll teach you how to do that exactly, but
Sure.
to set up like a framework that will enable that, yes, we will be doing that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Hey, Bobby, are you gonna? Oh, sorry, I was just about to ask you actually if you're gonna step away. Yeah, go ahead. I'll ask you
No,
later.
you're fine. You're fine. What's up?
Just real quickly. So that I think it was called join data. Let me see. What was it? New data from join option.
Yes.
Yeah. What does that let you? Does that let you do VLOOKUPs across data marts, or what is that function for?
So, yeah, so it's not necessarily VLOOKUPs across data marts, but
access a fact table on a star schema. I guess you're a data guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it allows you to literally join tables together, and those joins would be like, you could select a data source, like an existing data source. So if you wanted to join enrollment census official with admissions or degrees or whatever, I mean, you can join those. You just have to make sure, you're joining on the right fields like term and student ID and stuff like that. Or you could, if you had like a spreadsheet of data, then you could pull that in and join it. So I guess that would be like if you had a list of IDs, that could be a handy way of filtering down the data down to just whatever IDs you're interested in.
Understood. Yeah. Okay, great. So that's really potentially very helpful for my position. I'll reach out to you later individually and maybe want to make sure I do that, but access it correctly. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Oh. Okay, Judd. Just seeing your text. Yeah, if you don't see the pencil thing, then you likely don't have report writer access yet.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I thought
No worries.
I got, yeah.
I would have. I thought it was there a couple of days ago, but
Yeah, I
don't
could have
see it
sworn.
now. It's okay. I will retain what I see.
Okay. Yeah, let me write a note and I'll make sure to email the appropriate people.
Thank you.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, what browser are you using?
Edge.
Huh. Maybe could you try opening it? I mean, do you always use Edge?
Pretty much.
Okay, never mind then.
Yeah. Do you want me to try opening it with?
Yeah, if you
Firefox?
could. Yeah. Yeah, generally Firefox is the recommended one. I should have said that earlier probably. But we'll see.
Hey, Judd, I'm an Edge user as well, and just on a couple of occasions, I found that Firefox has helped me and found a way around whatever issue I was experiencing.
I've run into that a couple of times.
But yeah, either way, yeah, sorry about that, Jeb, but we'll get it figured out.
Perfect.
Okay. So this next bit that I want to talk to you guys about is the standard report templates. So this is what you would do in lieu of creating a report from scratch. You would use a template, and that again, that allows you to already start with a data source selected and filtered. It'll have custom fields with custom logic behind them available to you. It'll have your metrics already made, like head count and application count and all that fun stuff, and more. So let me go ahead and click share and collaborate. And once again, in my favorites, let's click on standard report templates, which you should have made earlier in the training. And let's see. So before we click on any of these, just a reminder, again, the word standard in the heading or in the labels here is very deliberate. Standard indicates that this is for official reporting. So all of these templates are they are essentially the data sources that underline these standard report dashboards. So you would utilize these templates if you wanted to communicate, the metrics that you find in the standard report dashboards, but you wanted to, break it out in a different way, or you wanted to add variables, or you wanted to visualize it differently. That's what you would be utilizing these templates for. So these are all for official reporting data. It's not live data. You can further filter the data out, or you could even remove some of the hard-coded filters. But as they stand, when you open these templates, they only look at official reporting data, essentially. But it's important to understand how these templates are defined so that you can edit them as you need to. And once again, I forgot I have to hit record again because there's an hour limit on the recording. Oh no, it's still recording. Look at that. All right. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started with this. First, I'll just go over what each of these is used for. though the names kind of spell it out for you. First is the admission census template, and that is used to communicate admissions-related metrics for fall 10 through fall 2019. Then you have admissions funnel, which is spring 2020 forward. The reason we have two different admissions two different admissions templates is because the first one, admission census, utilizes a data source, like an older data source, and the admissions funnel utilizes a newer one. The old data source is still used for official reporting for all the terms, for the terms fall 10 through fall 2019, because the new data source, if we were to point that at the older terms, we would actually get different numbers, and that's because the data sources, how they calculate certain things is different. The reason we changed how some of these things were calculated is to make the new data source more in line with how users utilize the data itself. Like admission census, it counts distinct applicants, like number of applicants, number of admitted applicants, number of enrolled applicants. Whereas with admissions funnel, it counts distinct applications. So an applicant can submit multiple applications for a single term. While this technically isn't really supposed to happen in the undergrad area, it does definitely happen quite significantly in the grad area. So we want to be able to count distinct applications to get a more, I guess, fair picture of what the application funnel looks like. And that's why we have the admissions funnel. So if you want to look at official reporting data in admissions, anytime spring 2020 forward, you'll use the admissions funnel. If you want to look at fall 2010 to 19, use admission census. If you aren't going to use it for official reporting purposes, you can still use admissions funnel back to maybe 2017. That might be as far back as I would suggest. But otherwise, it's up to you. And then we have enrollment census official headcount, and then enrollment census official FTE and SCH. So this is actually utilizing, both of these templates utilize the same data source, but they are formatted in ways to accommodate different metrics. So the first one is used for headcount, as the name suggests. And the second one is for FTE and SCH, which is course enrollment, essentially. So the difference between these data sources is what fields are available to work with, and what filters are applied. So with headcount, well, let me preface with this. With headcount, you generally look at at the academic plans a student is enrolled in, like what college of plan they're enrolled in, what department of plan, or what academic career. You're looking at fields pertaining to their academic plans. With course enrollment, you're looking at courses, and specifically you're looking at FTE and SCH, full-time equivalent and student credit hours. Now, you never want to combine course enrollment metrics with any field that has to do with academic plan. And that's because the number of academic plans a student is enrolled in acts as a multiplier on their course enrollment. So let's say a student was only enrolled in one course, but they were pursuing two academic plans. They were a double major. Well, their single course would appear as if they were enrolled in that course twice, because they were counted once for the first major and once for the second major. With this duplication, it's going to make if you combined academic plan related fields with course enrollment metrics, it would artificially inflate our course enrollment numbers and make it look like we have way more students enrolled in the courses than we actually do. So that's why you never want to combine course enrollment metrics with ACAD plan. You can technically combine headcount and course enrollment metrics, but again, you never want to include academic plans at the same time. So that's why we don't really, that's not as common of a thing. So we don't really have a headcount metric in the course enrollment template. And we definitely don't have course enrollment metrics in the headcount template. Now, to prevent you from combining these fields in the headcount template, we have hidden all the fields that have to do with a course. So we've hidden first off, and especially the course enrollment metrics like FTE and SEH, but we've also hidden, course ID and class listing and things like that. And then in enrollment census official FTE and SEH, we've hidden all academic plan related fields. So you don't accidentally utilize or you don't accidentally combine those things. And then finally, in the headcount template, there are a number of filters, like to filter down to only the records that we want to look at for official reporting purposes. There are at least one or two filters pertaining to academic plan related fields. So you'll find those filters in the headcount one, but you won't find those filters in the FT and SCH template. In the FT and SCH filter, or in the course enrollment template rather, you will find a filter that essentially it's called a course report flag, and it's always set to equal yes, and that's just to again prevent that duplication from occurring. So essentially, takeaway is use the headcount template for headcount and the FT and SCH template for course enrollment. And especially if you are trying to create your own report from scratch and you're trying to do so to look at one of these metrics, it's probably best to work from a template to start with, or to work closely with decision support so that we help you navigate this this process, because it can get pretty confusing pretty quickly. But we've had to deal with that, and we're finally familiar with it, and we can help you with it. And then finally, we have the degrees conferred IPEDS template, which looks at, as the IPED suggests, official reporting numbers for degrees conferred. And it is updated. That data is updated once a year, every September. You get the entire previous academic year's worth of degrees conferred data loaded at that time. But otherwise, it's not updated. So, after the summer semester is done and after the fall semester is done, you're not going to see an update of those numbers with the most recent degrees data. It's always going to be updated once a year with in September, and it'll have that entire previous academic year's worth of data. Okay, so all that said, let's go ahead and I'm going to click on admissions funnel real quick. Let's open that one up and see what that looks like. So with the data tab selected here, well, again, you want to make sure in editing, and then with the data tab selected, you'll see all the data fields available to you in this data source. And you see that admissions funnel is selected. Let's click the actions button and then click edit data filter to see what that data filter looks like. Okay, so what we can see is academic career, always filtered to grad and undergrad. It looks like there's no other options to even choose from. So loaded into SAS is only undergrad and graduate records. I guess I have a habit of filtering for those two values, so I always keep that filter in there. Academic plan type. We always only look at major, pre-major, and course of study. We exclude any plan types that are null or having to deal with concentrations or minors. And then we say we only want to look at terms that are greater than or equal to spring 2020. And then here we have these and or statements, and then some ands within that or statement. So essentially it says career has to be in this list, plan type has to be in this list, term has to be greater than, or equal to spring 2020. And one of these three and statements needs to be true. So the first and statement is term code ends in 8, which means it's a fall term, and the weeks to preliminary equals 0. And then there's term code ends in 2, and weeks to preliminary equals 0, or term code ends in 5, which indicates it's a summer term, and weeks to final relative to final census capture equals 0. And again, sorry, if the term code ends in 2, that means it's a spring term. So what does this weeks relative to preliminary and weeks relative to final mean? Well, in the admissions funnel data source, we have weekly captures. That means once a week we take a comprehensive snapshot of what the data looked like at that time, and that allows us to look at year-over-year data. So, like let's say the admissions office, they are halfway through their admission cycle, and they want to see what their app counts this year stack up to the same point in time last year. Well, let's say that the admission cycle is 1 year on the dot, so it's 52 weeks, and we want to see at what point, or we want to compare where we are now to where we were this point last year. Well, let's say that the admission cycle ends as a preliminary census. So if we look at weeks relative preliminary census, there's 0 weeks away. Like this weeks relative to preliminary, that's the number of weeks away from the preliminary census that we're talking about. So if it's 0, that means that is the preliminary census capture. Okay. So that means if we're looking at fall terms, term codes ending in 8, and weeks relative to preliminary, that means we're 0 weeks away from the preliminary census capture. That means in the fall, we're looking at the preliminary census capture. In the spring, we're also 0 weeks away from preliminary, so we are also looking at the preliminary census capture. In the summer, because we don't have a preliminary census, we always want to be looking at 0 weeks away from the final census capture, because that defines the end of the summer recruiting cycle. So this is just another way of saying if we're looking at fall or spring, we're looking at preliminary census, and if we're in the summer, we're looking at final census.
Bobby, sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
I didn't catch. I know you said something about actions to get to this filter, but I'm not able to find it on my end. Would you be able to show me that again?
Yeah. Sure.
Thank you.
So here we you want to be on the data tab first.
Okay. Got it.
And then you have the data source selected here, and then this button just to the right of it, the actions button.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll click on that, and then you'll click edit data filter.
Got it. Okay, thank you so much.
No problem.
So I see that I have apply data filter when I click on that, but I don't have an edit data filter.
Okay. Whenever click out of that, and at the top of your page, does it say O2 admissions funnel, spring 2020 forward?
It looked like I was on 05 student tracking, so I clicked on a different one, obviously.
05 student tracking?
Yeah. So I clicked on the wrong one, I believe.
That shouldn't be available to you.
Okay, because I was like, that's what it says.
Let me click share and collaborate. Is this
Okay?
when you click share and collaborate, is this the file path that you land on?
Yes. Yes. So let me look here. So yeah, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. I have those.
But not student tracking.
Not student tracking here now.
But the thing that you had open said student tracking.
Yeah, I did.
All right. Well, we are going to
Okay.
have a conversation after.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yep. That's strange. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so we're talking about the components involved in a standard report template. We've discussed they have the filters that allow you to look at official reporting data. The next thing that they're going to have, oh, and also I can go through all of these templates, but I don't really want to waste your time with that. But if you go to the template documentation tab, it will outline all the filters that are in place, and tell you what measures are available and what custom fields are there and all that. So the template documentation is really valuable in understanding exactly what you're getting yourself into with this template. Let's see. So there's that. Then custom fields. Now, whenever you are working with any of the data sources that populate a standard report dashboard, whenever you look at the field list, which is, again, you want to be in the data tab, you can scroll through all the fields available to you. Now, unfortunately, in SAS, we can't store fields relating to the same category of stuff. We can't store them in subfolders. So instead, we created a naming convention that allows fields that are kind of related to be listed next to each other. So you have first this app char, which stands for app characteristics, app status, all these prefixes, HS equals high school, last high school, city, and then you have this RPT one, right? And then plenty of others after that. Now, what I want to encourage you to do is type in the filter, just type in RPT. So that's going to bring up all the fields that have an RPT prefix. And any field that has an RPT prefix is one that can be used, that is used for official reporting. I mean, you can technically use any of the fields in here for official reporting, but these are ones that are formatted, that meet the formatting standards that are set forth in the standard report dashboards, essentially. So, academic career, typically, well, wait, let me decide how I want to explain this. If it's an RPT field, that means a lot of times there's custom logic behind it. Now, sometimes that custom logic is used to create something that it might use multiple fields to create a new value. A lot of times, though, the vast majority of the times, these RPT fields just indicate that these fields have been formatted to be more user friendly when read. So like natively in the warehouse, academic career values are stored as codes. So like undergraduate is stored as a UGRD. Law is stored as LAWS. Dental is stored as DENT. And it's just not as user friendly. Whereas in the RPT fields, undergraduate is stored as undergraduate, grad is stored as graduate, and dental is dental, law, and medicine. Like all those are saved specifically how we want to display them, right? So essentially, if you want to add a field into one of your reports, whether that be in a table or in a chart, what I encourage you to do is first search RPT and then scroll through these to see if a version of that field is available in the RPT version, because these have all been adjusted such that the display values are much easier to read and consume as an end user than they would be if they were just saved as codes and things like that. So that's one portion of the custom logic that you'll find. Now that said, most of these RPT fields, you'll find them even if you're just using the admissions funnel data source and not working from the template. It's regardless of the template, you'll find RPT fields if you're working with a data source that populates a standard report dashboard. However, the fields that are only found in these templates, if you want to look at those, type in parentheses V parentheses. That stands for is these fields were defined in SAS via, V as in via. So again, a lot of times these are just formatting the values so that they display a certain way. Sometimes it's just like in the case of academic plan, I click edit. If I right click on it, and I click edit to see how, see what the logic is behind it, you see it's just straight up academic plan. That's because we want, for all the fields that can be used or that are used rather, straight out of the box for official reporting. We also want to create an RPT version, like a labeled version of that, so that you know that you can use this for official reporting as well. So essentially, if you're going to add a field to one of these reports and it's going to be for official reporting, I encourage you to see if there's an RPT version of it first. Otherwise, if there's not, just search for that field wherever it may be. So yeah, keep that in mind. And then, let's see. Okay, so those are the custom fields. Now within all the fields that you'll see, there's going to be different groupings. One is category. So category here, these are fields that SAS interprets as characters or strings. So they look, and that's a specific data type for those who haven't worked with creating queries and such before. So they look at it as just alphabet, right? Measures are all the fields that SAS interprets as numbers. So all these things are some sort of number. So you have core HSGPA, age, a bunch of different test scores, and so forth. If you look, actually, if I type in ID, you'll see that down here, student ID, that's actually under the categories. And student ID, if you're familiar, is just a long number. So sometimes SAS will interpret IDs as being numeric, but in the standard report templates, if it's doing that, we have tried to be vigilant about it and convert it to categories. So so SAS interprets the fields correctly. So if I were to look at the measures, and for some reason, last high school unweighted GPA, if that was supposed to be interpreted as a character or a string, you could right click on it and say convert to category, but we don't need to do that. And then under aggregated measures, you'll see all the metrics that were created for you to be part of this template. So you have applicants, so you can still look at distinct applicants in the admissions funnel, even though the funnel itself was primarily designed to be used to look at applications. You can look at number of applicants. But then, you have the applications, admitted applications, enrolled applications, and confirmed, as well as selectivity and yield. All of these, except for frequency percent, all of these would not be available to you if you were starting from scratch. Frequency percent is one of those measures that SAS has available to you automatically. It's essentially just like looking at row numbers, essentially. Very rarely have I found that I needed to use that. You may come across a situation in which you need it, but I doubt it'll be very often. So yeah, that is one of the components for a template, is the already created measures. And then we have the hidden fields portion of that. So that's something that we need to look at the enrollment headcount template for. So I'm going to click the pancake and then click share and collaborate again. And once again, I'm going to click on the headcount template. Okay, so once again, we're on the data tab. Enrollment census official is the data source. We already have the appropriate data source filter applied so that we are looking at official enrollment or official reporting numbers. And then you see all the data fields available to us, but we're only seeing a subset of those fields that are in that data source because this is a template and it's specifically for headcount. We are hiding all of the course related fields here. So if you wanted to see what course or what fields are being hidden, you can click on this vertical ellipsis here and click show or hide data items. And as you can see, all these course related fields are listed as available, but these are all the ones that are actually selected. And by selected, that means they're visible. So there's a bunch of different fields that are being hidden so that you don't accidentally use them in combination with the wrong fields. Okay, so that is what a standard report template is. It is one that, it's essentially a starting point for if you wanted to create a report that communicates official reporting data, whether that be for admissions, for enrollment, headcount, for course enrollment, or degrees. And in the case of Tiffany, also for student tracking, even though she shouldn't be allowed to see that. Let's see. And the components of those templates are the data sources are selected and they are filtered automatically for you. And they have the custom fields, not only the RPT, which indicates that field, can be used for official reporting, but also the custom metrics like headcount and applications and so forth. And then they have the hidden fields so that you don't accidentally combine two fields that shouldn't be combined with each other. So yeah, any questions about standard report templates?
So to clarify, we could we could save this to our My folder or favorites once we've sorted it how we would need to.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. Okay. Now it's time to actually build stuff and visualize stuff. I know all this stuff has been like theoretical because like the data is loaded, but we don't see the data and it can be frustrating. But now we're actually going to start building this stuff out. So to do that, let me just check something real quick. Okay. Yeah. We're going to start by creating tables, okay? Now, the foundation of adding anything into a report is going to be this objects button, this objects tab here. Objects are the things that you add that then visualize the data, right? So like you can add in a crosstab, which is like a pivot table, a list table, which is just like if you want to look at a list of student IDs or students, and maybe some related fields like, demographics or academic plan related stuff. You can just do that. And then obviously the graphs. So, bar charts and all sorts of crazy stuff, line charts. I mean, there's a ton of different things you can work with. We're only going to be, honestly, in this training, we're only going to be covering crosstabs, list tables, bar charts, and line charts, because otherwise we'd be here forever. So yeah, the next bit is going to be looking at how to visualize this data. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and drag in a list table. So this whole process of building stuff is really just drag and drop. You want to drag and drop in these objects in the format that you want. So once you drag an object in, you see that it has this button labeled Assign Data. So to do that, let's go ahead and click on that, and let's type in RPT to look at all the official reporting fields. And let's click College or Plan, and let's do, and then let's get rid of the RPT search and search headcount. And click OK. So now you get a list table, and what we're seeing here is the grand total, but also distinct count of students, head count of students for each college. Now, this head count of college, remember, we're utilizing a template, so it's being filtered by the data source template that allows us to look at official reporting data. And to remind you, if we click on the Actions tab and click Edit Data Filter, we see all the filters that are in place for this one. So it's academic plan type equals COS, MAJ, and PRP, which is course of study, major, and pre-major. Essentially, it's excluding minors and concentrations. So, but also, this is looking at the data across all time, at least at all time that's accounted for in this data source, which goes back to fall 2010. So later on, we're going to discuss how to filter that data, like how to allow users to filter that data, because users don't really filter the data source filter. That's hard coded, so to speak. Later on, we'll discuss how to add in controls so that users can say, well, I want to look at fall 2021, or I want to look at spring 2019, whatever it might be. So this is what a line table looks like, right? Super simple. Well, let's click the objects pane again, and let's drag in the crosstab. And as you see, when you pull it in, right now that would allow us, that blue bar up top says it'll put it above the list table. If we pull it down a little bit and to the left, it'll put it to the left, to the right. You can make it on the bottom if you want. Let's put it to the right of the list table. And then let's click the Assign Data button again. And let's click Rows. And just for comparison's sake, let's type in RPT. And again, select College or Plan. So we can look at it kind of one-to-one, so to speak. And here in the measure, you see that frequency is automatically populated. That's because frequency is the default measure that SAS always adds to all objects if that object requires a measure. But again, frequency is like a row count. And, typically we want to count distinct counts of IDs or some sort. So, if you want to use frequency, great. But otherwise, be sure that you're using it intentionally. We're going to replace it, though, with head count. So if we just left click on that, we can click head count. And now we see this other option here, this columns option. So if we click on that, let's type in let's search for gender. Let's break it out by gender. Once again, we have an RPT version and we have a student demographics version. The RPT version, it displays as male, female, unknown, whereas I think the student demographics version displays as M, F, or U. So it's just a code version. I always choose the RPT version because it's literally spelled out for you. So now you see in the in the crosstab, you can break out the data horizontally instead of just vertically. So whereas in the list table, if you wanted to add more fields, you can only continue to make the you can only continue to add columns to it, so to speak. So let's say like I've already applied, like I've already chosen my fields. And I want to add more, and I want to change it. In order to change the role assignments that you've assigned these data fields to, you want to click this role tab on the right here. Data roles. So the concept behind data roles is the data fields that you select to be part of these objects, they play a role in building out those objects. So you assign a field to play a specific role in that object. So in the list table, there's only one type of role, and that's columns. And that is, we have it broken out by college, and we have it broken out by headcount. And, well, it's not really broken out by headcount. It's just, that's one of the things, that's the thing that college is summarizing, rather. In the crosstab, however, there's 3 different types of roles. You first have the column role here. You have the row role here, and then you have the measure here. So you need to, by adding a field to one of these roles, you are saying what the function of that field is in this object. So different object types, like in the case of these 2 charts or tables, you have different roles here. And especially whenever you get into these different graphs, they are also going to have different roles. It's definitely well beyond the scope of this training to look at all the different role types that you'll find in these objects. But as you work with them, you'll see that, it's not that complicated, really. Like you kind of start seeing the trends and the patterns of how things work, and it's not really that hard to get a hang of it. So if I were to use the list table and let's say I wanted to, kind of like we did with crosstab, add in gender, all I can do is add in gender to this columns option here. So I click add, type in gender. Again, I'll use the RPT version, click OK. And now it's just adding gender to the table. Well, if I wanted to sort these list these in a specific order, I can actually click and drag gender above the head count. So it goes by college and then gender and then head count. In the crosstab, I can move gender from columns down to rows. And as you can see, it's now pretty much functioning as a list table, but it displays a little bit differently, a little easier to see, depending upon, I guess, how you like to view the data. One last time clicking on the list table, there's also this hidden thing. I'm not even gonna, I've tried to figure out what that does. I can't figure out what it does. So I guess, only use that if you can figure out what that does in the documentation, because I haven't had much success with that. So yeah, let's see. Okay, look at this. Just looking at my notes here. Okay, yeah. So that's if you want to visualize tables, visualize the data in tabular form. It's one way to do it, at least, or 2 ways to do it, rather. I like using list tables if I'm going to be looking at like student records. It's like, say up here, in crosstab, you put that on the left. Say you want to look at the College of Education down the road, we'll figure out how to click on these and click on one object and have it filter the other objects. Now, if you wanted to click on the College of Education and then have all the student IDs and names pop up that are enrolled in the College of Education, you can set it up like that. Essentially, each object, it has its strengths and its disadvantages, advantages and disadvantages to displaying data in one way or another. And that list of pros and cons results in, kind of it's better to use it to display certain types of data. So, fiddle around with these table types and see which ones work for whatever you're trying to communicate. It's all about what you're trying to communicate when you're building these reports and dashboards. Find the right object, or find the right data source that has the data you need, and then find the right object that communicates data in the way that you need it to be communicated. Okay, the next thing that we're going to be looking at is charts, how to build bar charts and line charts. So to do that, before we do that, another hour has passed. So I am going to, let's take another 10-minute break and meet back up here at 3:15. And did you have a question, Tiffany?
Do you want to see what I was seeing, or do you want to wait till the end?
You can show me.
Okay, yeah, it's just even right now, I don't have College of Plan. I had college. It went from College of Plan to Common App on what I was looking at under RPT.
Please
So,
share your screen.
okay. So I was like, I don't have this. Hang on one second here. Are you able to see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So, if I go to data, you kept saying College of Plan, and I was like, okay, but I was like, I don't see it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's because you are working in the admissions funnel report template, whereas I am looking in the enrollment census official.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so sometimes they're not named exactly the same, but yeah. I appreciate you raising my heart rate and thereby helping me to spend some calories. So that's good.
But the tracking, is it because I'm an RPC coordinator that I'm able to see that? Because I did have those dashboards and analytics.
Well, it's one thing to have the dashboards,
okay,
but it's another thing to actually see the template. The reason I deleted the template, which is why I'm confused. Well, actually, no, I think I moved it, but to my folder. But I was confused that you could see it because like nobody should see it. The reason that it shouldn't be available. Okay. Registration track. Yeah, so it's not even. Oh, no, that's the dashboard. That's the dashboard.
Okay, because I was like, I don't know. I can see it. I want to make sure it's the right thing.
Yeah, no, you should see the dashboard. Yeah. The reason we don't have a template for that is because it can be really confusing. And if somebody wants a dashboard for that type of data, then we'll be glad to build it for them.
I think that's what Dr. White in my office actually worked with you all on.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay, yeah, because Anne's tracking, which means Dr. White has shared it with me. So
yeah,
okay, yeah, I know. I go to her usually for most of it, but eventually, for me, I was able to in analytics track them, kind of like where have you disappeared to down to the student level, and so I know she's been working on that and make sure she understands how to get back to that.
Sorry, I had to turn my lights on.
So you're good. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, thank you. I'm
glad we got that cleared up.
No, you're good. You're good. Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So we have gone over the page or how to create list tables and crosstabs. Now let's go over how to create charts. So to do that, and go ahead and add a page here by clicking that add button.
I'm not seeing your screen right now.
Oh, whoops. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So all I did was click this add button and page 3 popped up. Actually popped up here, but you can just drag the pages next to each other. And now we're going to create, look at creating bar charts and line charts. So let's go ahead and drag a bar chart in and click assign data. So the category is, the role that plays is essentially how the data is going to be broken out. So I guess let's start with measure because it's simple enough. We can click measure and we know that we want to break it. We want to look at head count, right? And then let's look at category. And once again, I'll search for an RPT for all the RPT fields. And let's say we want to look at it by full-time. And I'll click close. So now, okay. So now we have a simple bar chart that's looking at head count by full-time and part-time. Again, we have over 100,000 students enrolled in full-time and over 100,000 even for part-time, but that's because this is looking at 10 years worth of data. We haven't filtered it down yet to a specific term. We'll do that in just a bit. So this is one way to do it. Let's say we wanted to look at the data longitude, or let's say we wanted to break this out though. Instead of just by full-time, we wanted to break it out. We wanted to further group that. So let's see what this group option, this group action does. So add, I'll type in RPT again, and you can add, I'll stick with like first gen because there's not too many values. And now within the full-time and the part-time, there's a different bar broken out by each value within the first gen flag field. So we have a legend at the bottom, and we see that first gen is of the full-time students. First gen looks like it makes up the majority. Status unknown is yellow, and not first gen is purple. So as you can see, UNLV caters to a very large first generation college student population. And then down here, you can see data tip values, and these are values that pop up whenever you are highlighting a bar. So if I just hover over a bar, you see head count, full-time flag, and first gen flag all pop up. You can technically add another field in there, but I don't really suggest doing that. I like just using whatever automatically populates the data tip values, because they are fields that are already in the chart themselves, and it's just easier to read that way. Let's see what lattice columns does. Let's add in another value, RPT again, and I will search. Let's look at gender. You see with lattice columns, it creates a distinct chart, bar chart, for each value within the gender field. So now we initially have broken it out by full-time and part-time, and within each of those, you have different bars for the first gen status, but then you have completely distinct charts for all the value, for each value within gender. If we if we drag and drop gender from lattice columns down to lattice rows, you see that still we have different charts for each value in gender, but instead of being distributed horizontally, we now have them distributed vertically. So there's a ton of different ways to go about looking at this and displaying it. It's really up to you. I'm going to get rid of the gender though real quick. I'm even going to get rid of the gen flag, first gen flag. So now we're just looking at full-time, part-time. Let's say we wanted to look at this data longitudinally, like over time, to see trends. Well, let's see. Sorry. I searched term. You got the term field, and this is by term code. If I switched it to RPT, like right now, the values are term codes. And if you read term code, like if you know the nomenclature for term codes, it's easy enough to read. But you can also just switch it to RPT term. But then you can't really look at it very well chronologically. So that's why I like, if I'm gonna put it in a chart, a lot of times if we're looking at multiple terms at the same time, I just use term code. But what's weird is you see that the sorting, I mean, it goes from fall 19 to fall 2020 to 21 down to fall 17, then 18, then 16. Like, it's really strange. And that's because the sorting is actually occurring. It's sorting from highest enrollment to lowest. But we want to look at it chronologically. So earliest term to most recent. So you can right click anywhere in the chart and then click the sort. Right now it's sorting headcount ascending. So let's switch it to term code ascending. So you see, this looks really strange, but that's because we're looking at fall, then spring, then summer, fall, then spring, then summer, fall, spring, summer. And these are very different these different term types are very different. So ultimately, you're going to see a very different amount of students enrolled in the fall compared to those in the spring, and then compared to those in the summer. So you don't really want to compare fall and spring enrollment, or summer and fall, or summer and spring, whatever it might be, because they're just completely different terms. You're not really comparing apples to apples. Moreover, a bar chart isn't really the greatest. It's not really conducive to looking at longitudinal data. Like, it's just confusing looking, and that's because bar charts, I mean, they're just not the best for longitudinal data. Instead, let's switch term code back to full time. I'm going to switch group by back to first gen in the RPT version. And now let's go over here to the Objects tab and click and drag line chart in. I'm going to drag it to the right of the bar chart. Now, once again, let's go ahead and assign the data. So first thing I always do is assign the measure. So assign that head count. And then category. Because we want to look at longitudinally, we'll look at term. And I'll make it term code. And once again, this looks horrific, like we're in a constant downturn, but that's because it's looking at head count in ascending order, or excuse me, in descending order. So I'm going to right click anywhere on the chart, click sort, and then term code ascending. Still doesn't look great because it's comparing fall, spring, and summer terms all at the same time. So all the wave crests are going to be fall, all the wave troughs are going to be summer, and then all these, not really midpoints, but slightly below the wave crests are going to be spring. But yeah, that's a better way to look at it longitudinally. Now, here's the thing though. Right now, we're looking at this data. We're looking at this data over the entire data source. So all time, essentially, from fall 10 through fall 2021. Actually, through summer. No, sorry, through fall 2021. My bad. And so you see that change over time, whereas with a bar chart, you see it all grouped together. So if you're going to be looking at multiple terms at the same time, typically I do not combine bar charts and line charts at the same time, because they're really meant to look at data at different granularities, so to speak. So yeah, to really take control of that, what you want to do is, like, you want to be strategic with the time period that you're looking at. So instead of looking at it all time, even if it's with a bar chart or with a line chart, you want to enable the users to select which terms they want to look at. So you would want to add in controls that allow users to select the filters. So in the case of a bar chart, typically I would allow them to select one term. In the case of a line chart, I typically would allow them to select a term type like fall, spring, or summer. And then within those, that selection, select, fall 16 through 2021 or summer 10 through 15, whatever it might be. So you want to add controls. We're going to get to controls, but one thing I forgot to do earlier is show you how to actually code in this environment. So that's what we're going to do real quick here, is we're going to show you how to code like the data source filters, how to create your own fields, and so forth. So yeah, let's do that now. First though, I'm in the enrollment census official headcount template. I'm going to go back to the admissions funnel template and go to the data tab. And here we have the edit data filter, right? So let's say we wanted to go ahead and replicate the first two things in here. We wanted to start from scratch or whatever. Let's say we wanted to start a report from scratch and we wanted to replicate the first two filter statements. So in that case, what we could do is, look and see what's done here. So we see this filtering for undergrad and grad. And then the academic plan type, that is filtering for major, pre-major, and course of study. So we could then see what that's doing there, and they're using end statements, and then go and recreate it in a template. So, or in a, not in a template, but in our own, generic report. So right now, I'm in that report one that we were just exploring earlier. You can either open a new one, or what I'm going to do is, since we don't actually have a filter applied, or we haven't really done anything with this generic report, I'm going to click change data source. And from there, I'm going to click this ADM funnel near the top. And then click OK. It says it was successfully changed. Okay, so one thing you can do. So let's rebuild those first two clauses from the standard report template for admissions funnel. So I'm going to click Apply Data Filter after having clicked the Actions button. And then we're going to use the visual interface first. So this is just the drag and drop interface. So in that template, it said career is in grad or undergrad. So we want to find in the operators, we want to find the end statement. And I know that the end statement is in comparisons. So it's right here. So you could use in, you could use equals for different stuff, but in this case, we're going to use in. Drag the end statement in. And then we need to find the career field. So we go to the data items tab and type in career. And drag that over on the left side of the statement. And then you can click this box. And we see that graduate and undergraduate. You can click one at a time and do that. Or you could say move all of them. Up to you. This filter isn't really necessary. It's just an example of how you can do things. So now we have replicated the academic career clause in the standard report template for admissions funnel. Now we want to add an and sign so that it filters for career and academic plan type. If you want to add an and or an or an if statement, you go to the Boolean or the Boolean. I call it Boolean, but I'm pretty sure I'm saying it wrong. Everybody else is probably right. So you click on the and drag it over. And whenever you drag it over and you hold it there, you can see it can highlight the entire statement. You can highlight the and, you can highlight the in, you can highlight that. You want to make sure to add an entirely new statement. You just hover over so that the entire initial end statement is selected. And now we have a new condition that we can fill out. So once again, we want to use the end statement. And under data items, we want to search for type because we were looking for plan type. So academic plan type. And click none. Click that box. And we know that we want to choose major. Holding control, you can click pre-major and COS. And then hit this add. There you go. Go ahead and click OK. So now we have those first two clauses created. One thing I do want to show you, I'm going to undo that real quick. Undo that second statement and say, let's say I only wanted to look at majors. And so I could just add an equal sign in there, right? So when I go to data items, I type in type. We have the academic plan type field again. Now, let's say I didn't know what the data appeared as on the in the back end. I tried to type in just major instead of MAJ. Well, that's not going to return any results because there's no record in which academic plan type equals major spelled out. So on the bottom right of this box, you see total observations. And that tells you the total number of records in this data source. On the bottom left, you see returned observations. And that tells you the number of observations returned once this filter set is applied. So whenever we type in major, there's no observations returned because there's no record that has major spelled out. But if we type in MAJ and click off of it, you see that almost 3 million records are returned. So that's why it can be easier to work with the in statement rather than equals, because in allows you to select the values you want to work with or that you want to include in the filter. Especially whenever you're unfamiliar with the data set, you're not sure exactly how the values appear. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to go back to the operators. I'll drag in back in and drag that on top of the equal sign. And in place of none selected, I'll add in the PRP, MAJ, and COS. Add those back in, and there we go. We have that recreated. So I'm going to click OK on that. And then I'm going to, let's go back to the template for admissions funnel. Edit filter. Okay, so we click edit filter for admissions funnel. Now let's say that I wanted to, I only wanted to look at fall terms. But remember, fall terms also have to, the weeks to preliminary also has to be equal to 0. So we would have to add this in there again. The term code is greater than or equal to spring 2020. But then we'd also have to add in the ands to get to this. So it's a pretty daunting task, especially if we're brand new to coding, to adding in these ands and then this, and then another nested and statement and all that stuff, and working with parse. And, you know, what is parse and why wouldn't you use other text functions to filter that? I mean, there's a lot of things that can make that intimidating. So instead of trying to recreate that piece by piece, what you can do is go into text. And what I do is I copy and paste the entire thing. Now, note, it's easy to like do this. That's actually not really selecting it. There we go. Like, you have to actually kind of click into the box and then drag over the entire thing to copy it. Otherwise, it doesn't allow you to. It can be a little persnickety. So I've copied that all that logic. I'm going to click cancel. I'm going to go back over to the report one, or the basic report that we were working on. And I go back to the edit data filter. And I'm going to just copy and paste over this. Okay, so now I have the filter for career and plan type in there, because visual, if I look at visual, it looks the exact same as it was in the other. Wait, no, it doesn't. What? It's not allowing me to, for some reason the visual is not showing that. Okay, let me go back to it. There we go. So now you see we still have the academic career, we still have the academic plan type, the term code. I mean, it looks the same as it does in the template, but we don't care about the spring and the summer stuff. We only want to look at fall. Well, instead of rebuilding this by copying and pasting the text logic in there, all we have to do is remove everything after the fall. So we see this and statement, and it shows app term code ends with 8, which means it's a fall term, and their weeks, and the weeks relative to preliminary equals 0, which means it's a preliminary census capture. So all we have to do is delete everything after that, so we're not looking at any of the spring or summer stuff. Oh, and it says more input expected. That's because if you see this, this parenthesis, that's associated with, that closes that parenthesis. So this is an open parenthesis. If we just add one more parenthesis, you can see that closes the statement, and now we're good to go. Now, whenever we go back to visual, it is that same statement, but instead of having the additional stuff, the additional statements for spring and summer, you only have the fall. So when you are coding stuff, you know, one of the hallmarks of coding is stealing other people's code. Essentially, it's I mean, you find code that works, and you can utilize it, and so that way you don't have to build everything from scratch from the ground up. So, you know, definitely copy and paste where you can, but make sure you understand what you're copying and pasting at the same time. You know, and what I like to do is I will, especially if, well, excuse me, let me restart that. What I like to do is build this stuff out in visual when I'm first doing it to get a grasp of how the functions work and all the arguments within the functions that need to be filled out. And then, especially if it's a repetitive thing, like this and statement where term code equals ends with 8 and then weeks to preliminary equals 0. If I needed to repeat that to be, you know, term code ends with 2 for spring and weeks to preliminary equals 0, I would go to text and I would insert the or statement here and then just copy the entire statement. The entire statement that says, you know, ends with 8 and then weeks relative to preliminary equals 0. And then instead of 8, I'll type in 2. And now there's a typo in there somewhere. But I mean, I don't really want to waste your time with trying to debug right now. But like, I mean, that's essentially the gist of how you go about it. Like, it's easier. Like if you're going to do something repetitive in the code, like build it out in the visual interface, and then you can easily duplicate that over and over again in the text and just adjust minor things in there. So yeah, that's how you type or how you write up code in here. It can be a little daunting at first, especially if you've never coded before. But you know, try to replicate some reports that are already existing, or try to backwards engineer how other reports have been created, and that'll help you get more comfortable with the environment. And you know, again, there's always the documentation to help out, but also always, you know, there's decision support. Just contact us and we'll be glad to help you, you know, get the hang of this process as you go. So that's how you work with the data source filter. This is actually the same environment that you would use if you wanted to create like a calculated item. Like if you wanted to use an if statement to say, you know, if gender equals M, then male, else if gender equals F, then female, else if gender equals U, then unknown, else blank, like that. Like you can create your own, you can relabel things that way, or you can create more complicated logic to create your own custom fields as well. There's also another way to create a field. If you go to this new data item button, there's this new or this custom category option. So with custom category, I'm gonna first, like, it allows you to take existing values and label them differently. So let's see what I mean by switching. Like right now, the custom category is set to being based on app number, but let's say we wanted to scroll down and look at here's RPT ACT. Yeah, let's look at ACT composite. So over here is all the values that are found within the ACT composite field. So let's say we wanted to set a group of labels for high scores and then use the plus button to say medium scores, another plus for low scores, and then and that's it. Yeah. Let's see. So let's say we consider scores of 30 to 36 to be high scores, and we consider scores of 18 to 23 and 24 to 29 to be, and let's see, 12 to 17 to be medium scores. We'll drag all those over. And then 6 to 11 and below 6, those are low scores. Then right now, we haven't assigned this no ACT scores on record. Right now, all values of the ACT composite field that are not assigned to one of these value groups, they will be grouped as they'll be grouped as other. What you can do though is you can say, well, I want them to show as missing. Well, that's one way to handle things. Sometimes that's not, you don't want it to show as missing. You just want it to show as something, some other label. So we could, you could just call it no scores on record, or you could just say show as is. So instead it just shows as no ACT scores on record. So it's up to you. And then you would name the custom category as, you know, ACT score groupings. Yeah, whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to save it, but yeah. So yeah, that's one way to do that. And you can also do that for like actual ACT raw scores, like this is the RPT ACT composite. This is already a binned score. Like scores that are 30 to 36 are already falling into this 30 to 36 category. But if you wanted to look at like go all the way down and look at like the actual test scores ACT composite, these are actual numbers. You can see the distribution in there. So if you wanted to call this school, not high schools, high scores, low scores, low scores. Now what you can do is click this and then like define the intervals. So 30, 36, and 20 to 29, and so on. So yeah, there's different ways to do it depending upon the field type that you're working with. Let's see. So yeah, that's how you create custom fields. I know that's like the super condensed version of how you work with custom fields and coding and SAS VIA. But does anybody have any questions about that right now? All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go back to the enrollments, the standard report template for enrollment census official head count. And let's see, we already have what I'm going to do is double click on page 3. I'm going to call this single term. And what I'm going to do is delete the line chart. Now, since we're only looking at a single term, we want to add a filter. So now I guess I should tell you what we're about to do. We're going to be adding in controls so that users can actually filter this data themselves. All the stuff that was in the data source filter, that's hard-coded. So that's stuff that the user cannot change. You can see that filter because you have report writer access, but users who just can view reports are not able to view the underlying data filters on the data sources. But if you want to empower the user to filter the data in whatever way they need, then you can add in what are called report controls. So the first thing you can do is add in a page control, which only dictates what is displayed on a given page. So in this, right now we're on the single term page. And if we click the options button on the top right here, that gives us all sorts of formatting options to make the page appear in a certain way. So, there's padding, which is the space between the actual objects in the page and the outside border of the page. There's the name of the page itself. How do you want the page to be laid out? Oh, this is actually, I clicked on the chart, so now it's, yeah. Whenever you click on an object, all this stuff changes because we're focusing on a different object, and there's different options depending upon the type of object you're clicked on. So if I'm clicked on the bar chart, there's a bunch of different options compared to the options are available that when I'm clicked on a specific page. So one thing that you can do whenever you are clicked on a page, and you can toggle between single term, which is the page, to the bar chart here. We're gonna keep it selected on the page. At the bottom, you can say where you want the page controls to be. Now, earlier I said that I always put the page controls at the top of the page. I put the report controls on the left side of the page, and that's what we're going to do here. Page controls at the top. There we go. Now there's a spot up here where you can put stuff. Now, if I want to add a control, something that allows the user to filter this stuff however they want, you want to go back over to the objects pane. If you want to add something that's visual to your reporter dashboard, it's going to be an object, so you want to add it over there. You want to make sure you're clicked on the objects pane. Now I'm going to roll all this stuff up real quick so it's easier to look at. And here, controls. Controls are filters. Filters are controls. It's just like a naming thing that can be kind of annoying, like because they're different names for the same thing. But controls are filters. Just remember that. Now there's different types of controls. There's the button bar approach. There's the drop-down list. There's the list. There's the slider, which don't worry about the slider. The text input, which is like if you have like a really long value, like academic plan description, and you want to allow users to type in that value, you can use the text input. But I usually stick to either the button bar, the drop down, or the list. The list is the only option that will allow you to actually select multiple values. But because in this specific instance, we're using a bar chart and we only want to look at one term at a time, we don't care for the list option. We want to use either the button bar or the drop down list. Now let's see what happens when we assign term to the button bar. And we'll use term, the RPT term value. Whoa, there's a lot of options. It's not really practical to display all of them at one time when you're ultimately only going to choose one, right? So I opt instead, if I click that value again, that removes the filter. I opt instead I'll delete the button bar, and I will use the drop down. And again, type in term, RPT term. And then when I click the drop down, I can choose a value like fall 2021. And now we see these counts clearly reflect a single term. The highest is full-time first gen, and that's 10,000 students, or almost 11,000. Okay. Now, let's say you want to add an interactive text box so that it shows you all the filters that are currently in place. So to do that, this is the controls. You want to click the content drop down. And here you can add in an image. That's how I add in UNLV logos in the official standard report dashboards. Or you could add in a text. I'm not going to worry about the other two things. So I'm going to drag in the text box. I'm going to drag it at the bottom of the page. And then I'm going to double click it. And I'll say active user filters. And then start a new line. And then on this button on the bottom row, all the way to the right, add interactive filters. And then just click off of it. Now you can see that it shows that we are filtering for fall 2021. I mean, it's pretty blatant up here. That's fall 2021. But, you know, whenever you add a bunch of other filters in there and it's not as apparent to what you're filtering on, it's nice to have this interactive filter text box so that you know all the filters that are in place. So yeah, now we are filtering for just fall 2021. Well, let's say we wanted to add another page. So I click that add, and then I'll type in longitudinal. Now for this one, and go back to graphs, we're going to add in the line chart. And once again, we're going to click assign data. Measure will be head count again. And category, let's type in, well, it's going to be terms, right? And we want to be able to display it chronologically, so we're going to need to use term code. Once again, it looks like a dumpster fire because the default sorting is not good. So if we right click anywhere, click sort, and then term code ascending. Okay. Now, what I want to do is add two different page filters. So first, what we want to do is make sure we're selected on the page itself. Over here in the options tab, you can see the name of this object is line term code, because that's just the default name, and it's composed of the object type and the field being used in that object. But if we click on the drop down, we can click longitudinal. So now we are working specifically with the page itself. Now it says the page controls are located at the top, but because we're not currently using them, it doesn't really appear, because if they can save space, it's going to save space. So if we just say, you know, put them on the left and then put them on the top, then that spot will open up. Now let's say you want to look at it by term type, because again, we don't want to compare fall and spring and fall and summer, because those just aren't apples to apples. So let's say we want to look at term type, and the term type field just says if it's a fall, spring, or summer term, or yeah, fall, spring, or summer term. So once again, we're going to roll up the graphs, and we're going to add another control, and we can add this one, term type. There's only 3 values, so we could probably use a button bar here. It's really up to your discretion on that one. We can click assign data. You don't need to assign a measure to this. I don't know why there's even an option for that for controls. And then click add for category, and then type in term. And you see RPT term type. So now you can say if you want to look at fall, spring, or summer terms. So let's go ahead and click fall. There you go. Still, the chart looks like a dumpster fire because, in my opinion, because the y-axis starts at around, if we hover over that data point, it starts at just over 27,000 instead of at 0, like they should. So real quick, we're going to fix that, just otherwise it's going to drive me crazy. If you click on the chart itself, over here on the options pane, you see all the options change, right? Well, if you scroll down, you see there's options for each axis. So we're going to say we want a fixed minimum on the y-axis. Right now, the fixed minimum is 27,364, but we want to set it to 0. There you go. Now the longitudinal head count looks much less chaotic and is less prone to giving you heartburn. Okay. So now we have that filter for fall, for term type, right? And now let's say we don't want to look at all time. We don't want to look at fall 10 through 2021. Let's say we want to look at just a few of the, at a few of the terms. Well, then if you want to select multiple, you're going to need to use the list type. Now, if we use this list, if we drag that in, we'll drag it next to, I don't know why it's doing that, but you want to have it highlighted so that it's to the right. What's going on? What? I don't know why it's doing this. Oh, it won't. Sorry. It's because it won't allow you to add a list control type to page controls when the page controls are at the top. So I was going to make a point by making it look terrible, but SAS has vetoed that attempt. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a container first. If I had put in the list type and then I had assigned term to it, it would display all the terms available, and there's just not enough space to do that whenever the page controls are at the top. So instead, we're going to put this prompt container up there to the right of term type. And then we're going to take the list, we're going to drop it right on top of the prompts. And from here, we can click, again, you can ignore the add measure, but we're going to click add category, term, and term code. So once again, term codes, if you can read them, it's really helpful. But if it ends in 8, it's a fall term. If it ends in 2, it's a spring term. And if it ends in 5, it's a summer term. The middle 2 digits indicate what year, and 2 indicates that it's in the 2000s. So 210 equals 2010, and 8 indicates it's fall of 2010. You know, spring 2011, summer 2011, fall 2011, and so forth. So let's say we only wanted to look at the most recent, 4 fall terms. You can do that. Of course, if we try to add in a summer term, nothing's going to happen because over here we've already filtered for only fall. So yeah. So that's how you add in different user things. Now let's say right now, here in the bar chart, we only want to look at one term at a time. But with the line chart, we want to look at multiple terms. So by necessity, we have to have these term filters be page filters so that they don't interfere with each other, right? Well, we can also add report filters that will filter across the entire dashboard, regardless of the page. To add a report filter for a report control, once again, you make sure you're clicked on the Options tab, and then you click this, where you click the top item here, which is going to be the name of the report itself. And then if you scroll all the way down, you see report control placement. Now it says it's at the top. As you can see, there's no place for report controls because if they're not being used, it will make it invisible so that you can utilize that space otherwise. Either way, we want to put, at least the way I tend to do it is I put report controls on the left side of the page. And right as I click that, this whole column opens up. So let's say we want to be able to filter by demographics with report controls. So in that case, we can put in let's say a drop-down list for gender, a drop-down list for ethnicity, and then let's create a list for age. So if you want to do a list, if you want to do a list, drag in a prompt container and then drag and drop the list on top of the prompt. So for the first one, let's do gender. Just add in the gender field. For assigned data there, let's type in ETH. You get RPT, iPads, race, ethnicity. And for this one, assigned data, age, and we'll put in age bins. So now you can choose multiple bins if you like. Now for gender, so we wanted to choose male, and then we wanted to choose Hispanic. As you can see, we have it's filtered for male and for Hispanic down here now, and for fall 2021. If we go over to longitudinal, well, looks like we forgot to add in the interactive filter text. So we can go back to the content again with the objects tab selected. Go to the text, the content, and drag in the text box. Type in active user filters, and then add interactive text or interactive filters. And now it'll tell you that gender is being filtered, iPad's race ethnicity is being filtered, term type equals fall, and then the specific term types that you were filtered to. So yeah. Now we have all this. There's some. Let's see, we have 20 minutes. Okay, let me show you one more thing here. So under the single term, I'm going to change how we're breaking this out. Instead, I'm going to get rid of the first gen thing. And then under report full-time flag, I'm going to just left click on that, type in college, and choose report college of plan. Okay. Now, to the right of that, I'm going to, with the objects tab here, I'm going to click tables. I'm going to pull in a list table to the right of that. And let's say we want to look at headcount by department here. So what I'm going to do is type in DEP and choose report prefix department of plan, and then search for headcount. Okay, so this now this list table is in the same page as is on this page, so it's being affected by this page filter, right? But here we're looking at it by college, looking at numbers by college, whereas here we're looking at numbers by department. Well, let's say we wanted this table, we wanted to be able to filter this table by clicking on this or on this chart. So that's where this actions pane comes in. Actions allow you can either manually define the relationships between objects on a page, or you can say automatic actions on all objects. Well, first things first, we're going to manually define it. So right now I'm clicked on the bar chart. As you can see over here with this drop down, the bar college of plan is selected. And let's say we want to define a relationship between the bar chart and the list table. So we'll click this list table, right? And then here it says, do you want to make it a filter or a linked selection? Well, right now we'll leave it as filter. And let's say you click on the College of Engineering bar. Hovering over it, we see that there are 769 College of Engineering students. And over here on the list table, now we see all of the departments within the College of Engineering. Now, this number, whenever you add all these numbers up, it may not equal 769 because there may be students with a plan in multiple departments. So they would be counted distinctly within each of these departments, but when you roll it all up, they'll still only be counted once in that grand total. So just as a warning there. Now let's, on this bar chart, we have this action defined, this relationship defined. What if we switch this filter from filter to linked selection? Well, in that case, let's click the College of Science bar. Now, what you're going to see is all the departments that are part of the College of Science are going to be selected. So it's not filtering this, it's only highlighting. It's not filtering the department of plan list table, it's only highlighting the departments that are part of the College of Science. So that this linked selection works if the field in over here is kind of, if these fields, if the college and the department plan, because they're hierarchical, this linked selection works. Let's say though, for argument's sake, that I go into this. Oh yeah, I already defined that this is this, because I clicked on that, it is connected to this as well, right? So okay, sorry. Let's say I switch from department. I click on the roles, use this drop down to select the list table, and I'll left click on the department and say, let's select gender. The heck? Oh, okay. Well, I have it. It says gender because equals male, and only male because I have the report filters equals male, or I have the report filters set to equal male. And for a second, I was confused, but then I looked at the interactive filter text box and I saw that we're filtered on male. So let's go ahead and clear that filter and also clear the filter for Hispanic. Okay, so now if I click on, now still this, with the action tab selected, and I created this connection with the list table where it's a linked selection. So if I click on College of Liberal Arts, it's going to highlight both male and female because there are men and women in the College of Liberal Arts. So it doesn't really tell me much. Like it just tells, like if I use linked selection in this case, when college and gender are not hierarchical, it doesn't really do much for me. But if you switch it from linked selection here to filter, then it still functions in a way that's usable, so to speak. So keep that in mind. Now, yeah. So now I manually defined this this relationship, right? Now that means it's a one-way relationship. So if I click on liberal arts, it's going to filter the list table. But if I undo that and I click on male, it's not going to filter the bar chart as well. So instead, if you want to get them to filter each other back and forth, you could do automatic actions on all objects. By default, it's one-way filters, but let's set it to two-way filters. So now if I hit liberal arts, it filters that, but then if I hit female, it will in turn filter liberal arts. So now we're only looking at female liberal arts students. If I wanted to undo these, I just have to click this X. So it takes a little bit to get used to, but once you have played around with it a little bit, it's pretty straightforward. And remember that whenever you click on these things, if you click on liberal arts, the liberal arts filter shows up there. And when you click on female, the female filter shows up there. So yeah, that is the basic gist of all that. Rules, I'm not going to go over these very much at all, but rules, this is like display rules. So it's like conditional formatting in Excel. Like you could create a rule that says if the head count value in this chart is greater than 15,000, then make this row or this measure or this cell display a certain way. So you could say, you know, if it's above 15,000, show green. If it's below 15,000, show red. You know, or if it says College of Fine Arts, then you can make that bar display a specific color. Like, you know, it's there's a bunch of different things you can do. It's just like conditional formatting. So you can church it up a little bit, make it look fancy. You have ranks, which allow you to say, like in the case of the College of Plan bar chart, you can say new rank, and you only rank things by a field that's actually in the object. So we'll rank it by College of Plan. Everything above this line here indicates that it's up in the object. And say, well, by default, it says you're ranking it by a specific measure. So by default, it says frequency, but we want to use it. We want to rank it by head count. And by default, it says we're looking at the top 10. Well, you could say I want to look at it by the top 5. And so it shows the top 5. And then you can say, well, show all the others combined. And it'll do that. So all the others are in there. So, but again, you know, there's not, those are very specific use cases that you use that stuff. A few things to note in general. I'm going to get rid of this crosstab real quick. Now, let's say that I were to okay, I'm going to get rid of this, or adjust this rather. So I'm going to go to the roles pane and remove gender, and left click on College or Plan, and we'll use last high school ID. Okay, so a lot of high school IDs, a ton of high school IDs. Let's say you wanted to export data, and you wanted to use, like you wanted to export record level data. I highly discourage doing that from SAS because it's extraordinarily easy for you to exceed the file size limit for you to export from SAS, especially when there's a ton of records like this. Right now, it looks like we haven't exceeded the limit because there's no like warning symbol here. But if I were to add another field in here, like say gender, now, I always use gender because there's very few values. If I add gender in there, that's effectively going to double almost, effectively double the number of records in there. So looks like there's still no no warning in there. Say ethnicity. Okay, so there's 21,000 records in there. And it's not too, like, you can still export this, it looks like, but that's because the table is relatively narrow. It's not too wide. But as you add more fields in there, you can export fewer and fewer records. So, and a lot of times it's not clear that you're exporting just a truncated version of what you intend to export. So you got to be very careful whenever you are trying to get record level data out of SAS. That's why we always encourage users If they want data exports, work with decision support, and we can try to get you like a SQL export where there's no risk of getting truncated data. If you were to try to export like bar chart data, if you right click on it, click export, click OK, open. Unfortunately, SAS does not export the data as a bar chart. It always exports it as a list table of some sort, and then you would have to rebuild it, the bar chart, in Excel. That's one of the quirks of SAS that we're kind of getting used to. But yeah, so anytime you export data, it's going to be in a list table. And then the last thing that I always tend to want to show folks is let me undo all this fun stuff. Yeah, that's good enough. Is one one thing, there's this filters thing here, and that allows you to click on a specific object. Let's get an example. I'll do this. Like here, you could say, well, I'm going to add a filter on College of Plan. Instead of selecting all, I'm going to say I'm going to look only at the College of Education. Well, right now, College of Education is being filtered, so it's only looking at College of Education. And if you hover over this, there's only 2,443 students. But if you look over here in the list table by gender, there's well over, well, just over 30,000, almost 31,000. This, if you click on the College of Education, it will filter that because we've set the actions accordingly. But otherwise, it doesn't filter. So while there is certainly a place for you to filter one object and not anything else, you have to do so very deliberately. You gotta be very careful. And also, these filters are quote unquote hard coded. So users won't be able to change them whenever they're viewing the report. The only filters that they can change are the report controls and the page controls. Moreover, all the hard coded filters, like this object filter here and the data source filters, they are not going to show up in this interactive filter text. Only the filters that users adjust themselves show up in this interactive filter text. So keep that in mind. If you have a report where you are filtering out some stuff, like on the back end, the users aren't going to know that. So it may be important that you share a documentation tab that says this report by default filters out this population of students, and you can't really add those back in yourself. If you need to add those back in, we can create a different report for you or something like that. So keep that in mind. There's the hard-coded filters, and then there's the user filters. Hard-coded don't show up in the interactive filters, and users cannot change them. And then the last thing that I always want to show folks, and we don't really have time to go into depth, but right now, like we built out this stuff kind of shotgun style, like really quick, and it kind of looks like trash. Not kind of, it looks like trash because the titles aren't formatted correctly. Like here, this says prompts instead of age. So like, essentially, the last step you want to do once you get the functionality going is you want to make things pretty, right? So not only does it soothe your potential OCD, but it also just makes users trust the report more. So to format things and to make them look certain ways, how you want them to look, you want to have the options tab selected. So here, I'm on this prompts container. If I scroll all the way down, it says button text. I call this age report filter. And this one, it says RPT iPads, but if you want to, let's see, if you want to title that something differently, you can. You can't change that it says RPT iPad, like iPads like that, because this is just a drop down. If you wanted, but you could add a title to it, just call it, instead of no title, call it iPad space ethnicity report filter. Do the same for gender. And you can add for this page filter, you can add in another title. Got the same for longitudinal. Term type page filter. You can either do this, add a title to it, and you can also change the prompts. So yeah, each object has different options. They have different things that you can change about them, whether it be colors, it be axes, how the line appears, all sorts of stuff. So, you want to kind of just, format it in such a way that it looks well put together and well thought out instead of haphazard like it kind of does right now. But yeah, that is the report writer training. I know some of it was rushed. I apologize for that. There's just a lot to fit in, even in 3.5 hours. But does anybody have any questions? I'll be glad to stick around if you like and answer those for you.
Are you?
I just want to.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to thank you, Bobby. I know that's a lot of material to cover, so thank you so much.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Are you able to share the recording with us, even if it's not posted? There were some spots where my screen was freezing up a little bit, and I want to go back and make sure that I can do the filters appropriately.
Yeah. Right now, I will stop the recording once this is fully finished. Somehow it's acting like it's recorded everything with no problem.
Yeah.
All 3 hours. So I will go ahead and once this is ready, like it takes a little bit to like prepare it on the back end. But it should be ready by tomorrow, and I'll try to get that posted on the website and let you guys know.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
And my last question, you had mentioned like collaborating with your office. Is there a contact we should use, or do we just email IAP and it gets directed to the person?
Yeah, just email IAP, and it'll we kind of have a group of people that work on these reports, and whoever has the most bandwidth at the time will assign it to that person. Typically,
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, typically it's me, but
No problem.
Yeah, and I know Megan, was it you that asked about a specific report, or Tiffany maybe that asked about either way, somebody had asked about will we learn how to create our own reports where it's filtered such a way and then users can adjust the term type or the term selection. Hopefully that was answered in this. If you want to, there are some filters that you want to add, and those are going to be hard coded. You would just put those in the data source filter, and then you would add report or page controls to allow users to change some stuff on the fly. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and thank you so much. I think I'm gonna kind of like take a look at it, take a look at what data I typically pull, and then reach back out and make sure that it's functioning the way that I envision it functioning before I do any reporting or anything like that, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. We would be more than happy to work with you on that.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Megan.
Hi, Bobby. It's Nikki
Hey.
from Graduate College. I just have, I say 2 questions, but Up in the that hamburger option, the three dots, there's option to play report and edit playback. What is that? What does it do? Or I'm sorry if I missed that. Maybe if it was already mentioned.
Which one?
If you click on the three dots, it says play report and edit playback. Is that like you can record some sort of a visual moving and then you can play that?
These three dots that I have?
Let me see. No, why is mine showing play report? I'm in like the cohort registration tracking dashboard because I have a question on that. And literally when I
Okay.
click on those three dots up there, it shows option to play report and edit playback. And I was like wondering what is that for?
Here, I'm going to stop the recording and I'll answer this one specifically.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry to keep you late.
No, you're fine.